Okay. It's quite unfortunate that no one is okay. Titinayo.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. I'm about to start recording it and just stream it because no one joined. So anytime none of you joined, I'll just stream. I'm not gonna cancel it because nobody joined. I'll just stream it, record it, and upload it. While you're here. So
Thank you, sir.
yeah. All right. So I've already started recording. So we're going to deal with data protection impact assessment. Is a very important topic in data protection. As a data protection officer, is like something we are going to be doing every day. It's one thing uh, you cannot not get. You must have to get it. You must have to learn it, know how to do it, because it's like something you are going to be doing on a daily basis. So, um, I'll start sharing my screen. Okay. So, well, like I said, we're going to talk about data protection impact assessment. So it's a structured process to identify privacy risk, assess the impacts on individuals, and define mitigation plan or control to reduce the impact. So what does it mean is any data you need to work on, you must try to first, before you start working on that data, assess the risk involved while working with that data. That is the main purpose. The core principle is that data protection impact assessment ensures organization anticipate, assess, and mitigate privacy risk before the harm occurs. So you work ahead of time. You are being proactive. As a matter of fact, why companies are employing you as a data protection officer is not for you to come and start solving their problems. It's for you to help them stop any risk from happening, becoming a reality, from becoming an issue. So you're being proactive, and that is what data protection impact assessment means. So you assess the impact of any data before, that is, he anticipate, assess, and mitigate risk before harm occur. So that is the main core principles of data protection impact assessment. It evaluates how personal data is processed. For instance, you are going to use customer data. What are the harms involved in using customer data? You must try to see all the harm before you start even using it. So potential risk to individual, you're evaluating potential risk. Potential means that it's not even a risk, but there's likelihood that this kind of risk associated within this data. And what is it? What can it do to individuals? And measure to reduce those risks, reducing the impact of, if the risk happen, you try to mitigate to reduce the impact, or even stop it from happening at all, from occurring. So the data protection impact assessment asks the following question: what data is being collected? why is it being processed? What risk exists? And how will those risks be reduced or mitigated? That is what we are doing. This is the best aspect of data protection. You must know how to carry out this DPIA, data protection, because you are being proactive. Example here is a fintech app introducing facial recognition. The data here is collected biometric data, and they will process identity verification. So the data protection impact assesses misuse of biometric data, unauthorized access of that biometric data, and bias in facial recognition. So because all these facial recognition uses a lot of AI, so the biasness, so we try to understand all the risks associated with the data that you want to collect. You've not even collected it, but you've assessed to know the risk involved, and you find a way to reduce the risk. So when is data protection impact assessment required? You see, GDP always make a lot of emphasis on data protection impact assessment, not only GDP and others. So under GDPR, that is General Data Protection Rule or Regulation, data protection impact assessment is required when processing is likely to result in risk. So any data that is likely to result in risk, we carry out data protection impact assessment. These are high-risk scenarios of data. Processing sensitive data like health data, biometric data, large-scale data processing, automated decision-making using AI, systematic monitoring, that is surveillance, and profiling individual. These are high risky environments where we make use of this scenario. They are all high risk, and these are where data protection impact needed. So we are trying to find out to reduce the impacts. Example, a social media platform tracking user behavior across websites. Data protection impact assessment is required. Okay, now we've seen the reason why we carry out data protection impact assessment. The next is, how do we carry out data protection impact assessment step by step? So we have itemized these steps, which is a framework that will help us to carry out data protection impact assessment in anywhere we find ourselves. The first step, if you want to carry out a data protection impact assessment, is to identify processing activity. That is the first step. What data are you processing? Identifying the data. So the first thing, define the data type, the purpose of processing the data, and stakeholders involved. So what kind of data are we using? Why are we collecting this data? Who is involved? These are the three things we need to do under identification. Then once you have defined the kind of data we are using, we are collecting, and the purpose and the stakeholders, the next step is to assess the necessity and proportionality. We are going to then evaluate, is the data necessary? Yes, must we use this data we want because it involves risk? Yeah, is there a lesser intrusive method? If we're collecting it and yeah, this is the data and so is there any alternative we can use to collect this data that is not risky at all? This is what we assess. Number 3, identify the risk involved. So identify the risk, privacy risk, security risk, and individual risk involved in that particular data we want to collect. And then assess the severity of the risk, how severe. So we are going to talk about the severity as we progress. Define mitigation, ways to control or reduce the risk. So implement controls such as encryption control, anonymization control, and access control. Then 6, approve, document and approve. So once that is done, we document and approve the framework. So that is data protection impact must be documented, reviewed, and approved. And then monitor and review. You have to continue to monitor and review it regularly. Now we see audit, real audit scenario. This is a scenario where we carry out a data protection impact assessment, AI credit scoring system. A fintech company introduces AI for loan approval. You know, it's not, it's one of the latest innovation. Everything about AI, almost everything we are doing now is AI. Before now, if we want to carry out a loan, it takes like some days to carry out a check or a lot of checks, calling credit review credit company and trying to find out the credit worthy of the person that is seeking for loan. But these days, AI can do that within a short period of time. AI have carried out a loan assessment. This is very dangerous. So in a situation like this, you're a data protection officer. This environment, because if AI makes mistake and approve a loan for a fraudster and the person made away with the money, so you can see how risky it is. So in situation like this, try to issue to identify biased training data, lack of transparency, and excessive data collection. These are areas where risk. The training data for that AI can be biased. So knowing that AI can be biased and lack of transparency and excessive data collection, these are where we might have an issue. So the data protection impact assessment finding here, the risk is bias and misuse of data. And under the scoring, we see that is 15, which is critical. We say is above 15 is critical and above 10 is high. So that is the data protection impact assessment finding, and mitigation is to carry out a bias testing, explainable AI, and data minimization, reduce the amount of data we collect. And the outcome is system redesign and regulatory approval achieved and reduce legal exposure. So the main thing here is to protect it from happening. We've not started collecting data, but we'll carry out assessment to make sure we understand the risk involved and see how we are going to dodge any kind of risk, reduce the risk. First is avoid. Is it possible to avoid the risk? If we cannot avoid the risk, how do we reduce the impact? So that is it. So we are going to try to understand it more through a classroom exercise, which we are going to look at now. These case studies, just like we do before. We are going to carry out a data protection impact assessment for a healthcare AI system, a fintech payment app, and a social media recommendation engine. So under the healthcare AI system, the first thing we need to do is to identify processing activities, and under that, we have AI system analyze patients' data for diagnostics support, and data processed under this AI system is medical history, lab results, and imaging data. So we've here clearly identified the processing activity. So the next is to assess necessity and proportionality. The necessity here, necessary for improving diagnosis accuracy and risk, is over collection of patients' data. That is the necessity here. So we cannot dodge it. I say it's necessary for us to carry out this processing activity. We must collect this data. So the necessity is it a compulsory? We must collect this data. Yes, it's compulsory. So we need it for improving diagnostic accuracy. So we cannot do without collecting that data. That is a necessity. It's very necessary. And the risk here is over collection of patient data. So all we need to do is to see how to reduce the risk. The control is limit data to relevant clinical parameter only. Because here is necessary, we cannot dodge it. So we're looking at the proportionality of the data we're going to collect. And the proportion is we're going to then collect only as small as possible. Make sure that we do not collect anything we don't need to avoid the risk, because the more data we collect, the more the risk. So under here, the control here is what we call data minimization under GDPR. So limit data to relevant parameter only. So call it data minimization. Under GDPR, data minimization. If you look at data principles under GDPR, you see where you see minimization, collect as minimal as possible. What you make sure you do not collect anything. So like leftover, you want to eat food and you go and get, after dishing food in a plate, you have a leftover. No, under data protection, we don't have leftover. Exactly what you need, that is what you are collecting. This will help to reduce the risk exposures. So now we've carried out assessment of necessity of that data and proportionality. Yes, it's necessary. We cannot bypass it. So all we need to do is make sure we get as minimal as possible. And then number 3, identify the risk. So even in the data we are collecting, we still need to, what are the risks involved? Unauthorized access to patients' data. Yes, the risk, the data we collect, even under data minimization, there are still risks. We still need to look at how we are going to reduce it. So unauthorized access to patient data is a risk. So anybody who doesn't have access should not access that data. AI bias in diagnosis. So we already know that AI can be biased. So we must make sure that we control or we understand the training data. The data we use to train the AI is of high quality. And misuse of sensitive health data, this misuse it, people can misuse. So these are something we make sure that only relevant people have access, so avoid misuse. Although even those who have access can equally misuse it, but these are the likelihood of risk involving in this data. So the risk here is PHI breach, and the likelihood here is 5, and we'll try to understand the severity of this data. So we've done this so many times. We say likelihood is 5 and impact is 5, and the score, the severity level, the risk level is the risk score. So the risk score is 25, and because it's 25, the level here is critical. And AI bias error, we say likelihood 3, impact 5, the score 15. So the level here is high. So critical and high risk. That's what is involved in this. 5, define mitigation measure. How do we control, control this risk, reduce this risk, or even avoid the risk? The only way to do that is through mitigations. These are number of mitigating circumstances or mitigating control or measure we have here. Here we need to carry out encryption of all the health data. Encryption. Then most of the data, high way to protect data is end-to-end encryption. We need to equally apply a role-based access control, making sure that only medical doctors, not just all medical doctors, authorized medical doctors have access to this particular data. And then AI bias validation test. We need to make sure that the AI is validated. Testing the AI, we must have tried to test the AI, carry out what we call stress tests. Stress test on AI, making sure that the AI is not biased. Yeah. Any AI you use, try to make sure is not bad. More especially all the AI agents we are building these days. You stress test it so many times to see how biased they are going to after a thorough stress testing. Most of this AI that are not strong, if you stress test them, you see them, they break, they become biased. So you need to test AI to validate that they are not biased. And anonymization for training data. So all the training data need to be anonymized, So that is a mitigating measure you carry out here. Once this is done, document your work and seek for approval. DPIA review, Data Protection Officer and Clinical Governance Board. So your work needs to be reviewed by Data Protection Officer. So which is you, if you are the Data Protection Officer working on this, yes, you review your work. And not only you are going to do that together with Clinical Governance Board. So it's not going to be only you. There must be a board that will help to review and approve the data protection impact assessment you carried out. And 7, monitor and review. So you've carried out a data protection impact assessment on a certain data you need to, or people within the organization need to work on. You carried out, you find out the risk involved, you carried out the mitigation circumstances involved, then you go for approval, it has been approved. It doesn't end there. You need to continuously monitor and keep on auditing. Audit log means as they are working on the data set, you continue to monitor the work done this week. You monitor all the accesses. Is there a third party who accessed this data that is not supposed to? Is there anything fishy? That is what we mean by continuous audit log. Periodic AI model review. Over time, AI can become biased. Even AI that after stress testing and validated is not biased, it can become all of a sudden become, so you must, because AI is a machine. AI is not meant to be. So a machine can develop first. So you continue to monitor AI to make sure they are not biased. If they become biased, they find out and put it in order. And then compliance check. You need to make sure that you are compliant within all the necessary regulatory authorities or regulatory laws like GDPR. Like you can see, when we are doing, we see area that we need to be compliant. Under data minimization, we see that we need to comply within the GDPR. Yeah. So okay, we have successfully carried out a data protection impact assessment for this health AI system. So you see, apply these 7 steps to carry out this. This is a template. You can apply it when you are working on a similar data within healthcare, NHS, or any healthcare. If you want to carry out a data protection impact, this is perfect. Now, if you are working within fintech, let's look at fintech. This is a fintech payments app. So under this, identify processing data. So processing data is we need to process user payment and financial transaction, and the data we are collecting is personal data, credit card or bank card transaction log. So this is the processing data here. Personal data, credit detail, and transaction log. So we first identify it. Then assess the necessity and proportionality. The necessity here we cannot do without, there's no way we can carry out without collecting this data. So required for transaction processing. So there is necessity, there is need for us to collect this data. If after assessing the necessity and there is no need to collect, there is no need, we will stop it there. That's how it ends. But if there is need to collect it, then we'll continue. But while we are continuing, we are now looking at how to protect this data we are collecting. So there is read here, the need is to require this data for transaction processing. Then the risk here is excessive KYC data collection, and that is the proportionality. And the only risk within the proportionality, we might collect more than needed. And here, control is to collect only legal required KYC data, which is what we did earlier. We're applying data minimization. We collect only the amount we need, data minimization under GDPR. And then we are, as we are going to collect KYC data, we need to understand the risk involved while keeping the KYC data under our custody. So what are the risks? Financial fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized transaction. As this data is within us, people can steal this identity, this credit card, and use it to cause a financial fraud and unauthorized transaction. These are the risks involved. And can it happen? What's the likelihood of it happening? Is 4, which is very high. The risk here is payment data breach. The likelihood of it happening is 4, meaning that it's high. The impact is 5, which is high impact. So when we times the 2 is 20, which is critical. So it requires an urgent attention. It's not something that we can ignore and or just monitor. So fraud attack 4,416, which is still very high. So it requires attention. So what do? We define. We can't just keep quiet. So we need to define mitigation measure because it's on high and critical level. It's not something we just keep quiet and monitor. So the risk measure here is to tokenize the credit data. Tokenization is adding another layer onto it, that it cannot just, it's only the person that has that token that can actually, all of us know what tokenization. If you don't know what tokenization, you see so many banks now, if you go to bank, they give you a token. So before you carry out a transaction, you have the token, you press and get a token to authorize or validate that transaction. Like me, that I'm using what they call it, Zenith Bank. I've been using their tokenization for almost a very long time. You know, now the tokenization added another layer. They added is authentication biometric. So now that is another layer, authorization. You can use biometric, you can use a tokenization card. This is one of the top security risk, the financial industry is here. And then MFA authorization, fraud detection AI, and transaction monitoring. So you see all the 4 layers of security measures added onto this activity, because it's very, the risk involved here is critical. The severity of the risk they are critical and high level risk. So we build strong security layer on top of this activity. And we need to go for, after this, we'll document and approve. So it has to be reviewed by compliance and the risk team in conjunction with the following law: GDPR, CCPA, PCI DSS. So these are the approval. All the approval, review and approval is making sure that is in accordance to this law. That is, whoever is reviewing the impact assessment, if it's in order, if it's in accordance of these different regulations. If it is, then it has to be approved by this team, risk team, compliance and risk team. Compliance is the law. When you are talking about compliance, you make sure it's complying with the regulation. And who is doing that? The risk team. So they are the people that carry out the approval. And then you have to monitor and review. Real-time fraud monitoring, transaction anomaly alerts, and periodic penetration testing by the cybersecurity experts. They need to once in a while do a pen test, do a penetration to see if they can hack the system. If they hack the system, it means the system is weak and you need to start adding another security layer. And in a social media recommendation engine, what we need to do is identify the processing activities, the data we collect. So what are we collecting? We collect user behavior data such as likes, clicks, view time, processing data to recommend content, and the assessment of necessity and proportionality. Yes, improve user experience is necessary because we need to improve user experience. The risk is excessive tracking. The control here is limit tracking to essential behavioral signal. And identify the risk involved, privacy invasion, profiling and surveillance, algorithmic bias, manipulation of user behavior. These are the risks involved, and we assess the risk level. The risk level of user profiling is likelihood 5, impact 4, data score is 20, is critical. And here algorithm bias, that is AI, is 4 and 4, that is 16. All of them is still at a very alarming level, which is critical and high. So we cannot ignore it, we cannot just monitor it. We need to build a security layer, which is the mitigation measure. So all you need to do is anonymization of user data, transparency of algorithm, opt-out mechanism, and bias monitoring. And then after that, we carry out a document and approval. It's going to be reviewed by the privacy team. It's equally going to be reviewed by the ethic board under the GDPR law. That is it. And once that is done, then we'll continue to monitor and review, continuous audits, bias audits, user feedback monitoring, regulatory compliance review. So you see, we've carried out data protection impact assessment under 3 industries now. 3 powerful, well-known industries. If you know how to carry out a data protection impact assessment on financial industries, you can do that in the social media industry, you can do that in the healthcare industry, you are powerful. So that's it. So cross-case comparison under the healthcare, we have patients, the highest risk, have patient data breach, and control is encryption and strict access. Under fintech app, the highest risk is financial fraud. We have tokenization and MFA. And under social media system, we have profiling, misuse, and we have transparency and opt-out as a control measure. So that's it. Final insight on data protection impact assessment. A DPIA ensures that risk is identified before we start work. So before we start deploying anything, or even collecting data, we need to carry out the impact, because as you are collecting the data, something can happen immediately. So before you start even collecting the data, carry out to see, make sure you put the necessary security measures in place before you start collecting data. So risk is identified before data collection, and sensitive data is protected appropriately, and systems comply with regulations, and ethic risk, especially AI, are addressed. So the golden rule is that no high-risk data processing system should go live without a data protection impact assessment. Yeah, you don't even have to start collecting data. All you need to do is know that this activity, we want to carry out this activity. This is the project we want to start. Before that project or that activity starts, it cannot start without carrying out a data protection impact assessment. Once carried out a data protection impact assessment, we know why we need this data we are trying to collect. If we see that, yes, we need it, then we start all these protocols to protect the data. But if we don't need it, under data protection impact assessment, then we stop the activity. Yeah, that is why it's a proactive measure of protecting the organization from any kind of data breach. All right, that is it for tonight. And I hope you grabbed it. So it's not, it's one of the most important, and it's not even so complicated. So it's something you must learn how to do, because it's something you have to be doing all the time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Can I just, the scoring, is there like a universal assessment? Then I see that you added, not, you multiplied, not add. When on
Yes, we've done that before. We've done, were you in the last lesson?
I was, but I'll catch up.
Okay, because the scoring we've done, this is what we did last time. We say you score the likelihood and the impact, you times it, and you get the score.
Okay.
So you cannot do without it, because that is what is going to show you if it's severe, or if it's high critical, or if it's the risk is critical, or the severity. So if it is critical, if it is high, if it is medium, if it is low. So if it is after carrying out the severe testing and they find out that is like below 10, then that is medium. You can just monitor it. If it is low, you can just ignore it or just have an eye on it. But if it's high, you have to do something. And if it is critical, you have to leave everything you are doing and sort it out. If possible, escalate it to the higher authority. Yeah. So that's why you carry out this impact assessment to understand the severity. If it's severe, you build a mitigating circumstance to protect and handle, safeguard the data. Yeah. The first thing is to assess, actually, do we even need this data? For instance, somebody are working in a bank and some people want to register and start using their banking app. And all the data that need to be, you need to check if all this data they are collecting, do they need them? If there are some of the data that is, if it's not needed, then there's no need of collecting. But if actually that is needed, then you understand how much do we even need, or try to understand. Make sure he's aware of limiting the risk. Don't collect more than you don't need. Yeah. So like now, if you want to go to the market, I will give you a general scenario. If you want to carry out impact assessment, you want to go to the market, you will assess the amount of money. Is it what you ask? Do I even need to go to this market today? Okay, anytime you are stepping out of your house and you are going to the market to buy something, that thing you are going to the market to buy, do you need it? Is it even essential? Or you just, because so many of us at times we just go to the market to go and start window shopping or something. Do we even need to go to the market? All these things we are going to buy, do we even need to buy it? What is the need? If you don't need it, don't leave it. There's no need in going to the market to buy what you don't need. No. But if you really need it, how much do you, don't just make sure you know how much, not just if you are going to the market, you put 1 million in your pocket, maybe see anything I see. No, you don't just put 1 million there. Let's see, maybe I might need. Try to understand what you need before you start going to the market. Make budget. If you need to buy something, you need to buy food condiment of 50,000, take 50,000. You are reducing the risk. What if you go out on the way, pickpocket even collect that money? If you did not, if you, for instance, you go to the market, you put 1 million in your pocket, you know you need 50,000 to go with 1 million. Why are you going with 1 million if you need only 50,000? Leave the rest at home. That is impact. You are now trying to reduce. Eventually, as you are stepping out on gunpoint, they say, "Madam, bring that your purse." Thank God, though. They just collected the 50,000. You see, you have reduced the impact. But if you just put 1 million because you have money, they will collect everything. You, even if you don't need it and you expose you. So try to reduce your risk exposure. That is what he's telling you. I hope this makes sense.
Yes, sir. Very much, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. All right. I've seen some of you submitted the assignment. That's good. So we don't have, I've done today's assignment for you, but to go read it, you need, because this particular topic, as a matter of fact, you see this particular note, you should keep it very, on all the notes you must keep them, but this particular, because it's something you have to be doing every day. For instance, if you are a project manager, you see risk, you see project plan, is something you have to be doing every day. You must know how to produce a project plan. You cannot even, it's not, only if you are not, as long as you're a project manager, you must have a project plan. You must continue to produce it. You must continue to refine it. If you're a business analyst, there's what we call process map. As a matter of fact, you must carry out process map on daily basis. Only if you are not a working business analyst. Every day you must carry out a process flow. Every process you need to work on, you must map it out to understand where the problem is coming from. Just like in this data protection job, you must carry out data protection impact assessment. Any data you need to work, or your team need to work, or your organization, you must assess the risk level. That is it. Good night.
Good night, sir.